Welcome back for another edition of Political Breakfast. It's Monday again. I'm Lisa Rayam, and our strategists are here, Brian Robinson and Tharon Johnson, and our producer, Lily Oppenheimer. Hello to all of you.
Ooh, it's cold.
It's cold today.
It hit me today. I went out on this little walk. I like to try to do my conference calls now while I'm like exercising, Lisa. So if it's a conference call that lasts an hour, I try to get a walk in. Man, I came out that door and took a right. I went right back in to get a big coat.
Yeah.
So
To get the big coat.
It looked good from the windows with the sun out, but boy, it's cold.
Yes.
You want to believe the forecast, but sometimes you're like, sometimes they get it wrong, but they got it right this time.
And I have a golden retriever, of course, and he, they were bred in Scotland, so like he's like finally, this is awesome. Yeah. Let's go for a walk right now, Dad. That's what kids. So
yeah, they love it. They love it. Right. Yeah. So it's gonna stick with us a couple of days. I see Wednesday it's gonna warm up some to the 60s.
Yeah, this is a short one.
Until then, we're gonna have to really bundle up.
This is the week of my wedding anniversary, which is November the 14th. So literally this week, and it had been 70. We had an outdoor wedding because it was at the governor's mansion there in that amphitheater to the left of the mansion, and the weather had been 70 degrees. It had been perfect. And then for the wedding day, the Arctic blast came in. And so, the bridesmaids were in long johns, and we had people dressed like they were going to go mushing in the Iditarod.
It's that time of year they say don't really plan for outdoors because you just never know. You never know how it's going to turn out. Yeah, for sure. I don't know. Have you guys been through the airport the past few days? I hear it's a mess. Those TSA agents, some staying home because they have to. They can't get to work. They don't have the money to get to work. And I just really feel for them.
Yeah, Lisa, I was just sharing with Lily and Brian. I go to that airport at least once every 2 weeks, sometimes once a week. Matter of fact, I'm actually going later today, not to fly, but to actually have a meeting. So last week when I traveled out of town, I got a call from a supervisor with the TSA, and very, very nice young lady. And she said, listen, I need help. And I said, what specifically do you need help with? She said, I got workers who cannot get to work. They cannot afford to put gas in their cars. And so I took the social media post about this. So I went out there. I won't disclose how much I spent and how many people I gave it to. But it was a big number of people. And the reactions on the faces of these TSA workers receiving these gas cards they met me with a sense of gratitude. However, what I figured out, Lisa, this is embarrassing what they're going through. These are women and men who B. Rob has said too. These are working class folks. They don't make that much money. Some of whom actually already are working 2 jobs, now 3 jobs. So, look, shout out to the airport for bracing from what they endured on Friday. FAA came out and said they were reducing flights because of the lack of air traffic controllers. The city of Atlanta, TSA workers steadfast. They kept everything steady. But it's a mess. And so what I'm hearing back from this weekend in Atlanta is exactly what you just said, Lisa. Long lines. People are missing their connections. People's flights are being canceled. People are having to stay overnight in hotels near the airport. And so while, we are coming out of this Senate bill, which we'll get into later, and yes, they've been promised some back pay at some juncture, but they still have missed 2 full pay periods. And so it's really, really bad. But shout out to Ricky Smith at the airport and his team. They're doing everything they can to just minimize the chaos and to try to work with the airlines. Delta stepped up and made a statement to say, hey, they wanted this to end as soon as possible because they're worried about the flight risk. And it's also a public safety crisis, too, where you literally have people who are tired, who are being overworked and not paid, who are literally trying to go through bags and make sure that people are not taking guns and weapons and things through. So hopefully it'll get better soon.
Yeah, I want to applaud you for doing what you did. But yeah, once they get there, though, the morale is just so low because they're not getting paid. They're not getting paid. And I can't imagine going to a job and just knowing that paycheck isn't coming, but the rent is due, the mortgage is due, and all the other bills are due. Brian, go ahead.
I'm one of the few non-baby boomers who watches the national TV news in the evenings, and the lead stories on Sunday night were about people not showing up for air traffic control jobs. And Atlanta was the one that they mentioned, that was a place where a high number had called in sick or not showed up or whatever. So there's certainly a strain there. We know that we can assume that if the media is choosing Atlanta, it's because it's perhaps worse here than other places. I don't know that. That's my assumption, though. So this is very localized trauma and something that hopefully will get fixed this week. I am disappointed that Warnock and Ossoff voted no on opening the government. I think at this juncture is a political mistake. There's enough other Democrats to voting yes to give them cover to do it. And they're pragmatists at heart, I think. And I'm surprised to see, particularly Raphael Warnock, who doesn't have the pressure of a reelect, the pressure of keeping his donor base happy right now, the way that Ossoff does. But this does show how going into the election year does create a political pressure on Ossoff, because I do believe he would want to vote to open the government, but he's not. And, he doesn't want to threaten his national fundraising base. I think that's part of it. And look, hopefully the House will be able to get the votes. There's obviously going to be some opposition. We're already seeing Nikema Williams from Georgia's 5th District saying, I'm a no on this bill. So hopefully we'll get enough Republicans in the Congress to stick together to get this over the finish line and get these people paid. This has gone on for way too long. This is ridiculous. I think we do need to have a serious conversation about health care, but let's get the government open first, and then we'll deal with all that stuff.
Well, Tharon, what is your thought on that? John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock both voting no on the Senate proposal to end the shutdown.
Well, I want to take our listeners into why they voted no. That was a good segue by B. Rob to go right into that. And honestly, Lisa, it's met this morning with a lot of Democrats with mixed emotions. So let's start off with the Democrats who are applauding our 2 U.S. senators who actually stood up. So let's just say, what John Ossoff said. John Ossoff said premiums are set to double for 1.4 million Georgians, and nearly 500,000 Georgians could lose health care insurance altogether. The president refuses to fix it and withholds SNAP benefits, while the House has not even come to work for 6 weeks. He also said with health care votes ahead, the question is whether Republicans in Congress will join us to prevent catastrophic increases to health insurance premiums. And then real quick, Warnock, I voted no on now last night, because we're taping on a Monday, proposal because it doesn't provide relief to 1.2 million Georgians who are about to see their health care premiums double and more, and people cannot afford it. He said, at the same time, I understand that there's overwhelming pain that has been inflicted on people in my state by President Trump and the Republicans from needless firings of federal workers. So, Lisa, my response to Brian's thing is exactly what these 2 U.S. senators said. I'm proud of them for voting no. I am. I really am. And I struggle with it because it's met with mixed emotions, because while I do want these federal workers, women and men, who, by the way, no fault of their own, have been put in this political situation by the president and the Republicans, I do want them to get paid. But I do applaud Senator Warnock and Senator Ossoff for standing on business and saying, hey, we got to make sure that when we got to that 40th day, healthcare matters. I've said it over and over again. People should not go broke in this country because they're sick. So the narrative has got to be the Republicans refuse to have a vote now. They could do it now to extend these healthcare subsidies and these tax credits for the Affordable Care Act. Instead, while the Republicans did introduce this bill and 8 Democrats in the Senate voted for it, our 2 U.S. senators believe that you can't trust the Republicans, that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. We've been promised now that there will be a vote eventually. But as B. Rob just talked about, this now goes to the House. And will it pass or will it not pass? So I think it's met with mixed emotions. Most Democrats I've talked to, Lisa, from Sunday until Monday as we tape, are really where the 2 U.S. senators are. But there are some pragmatic Democrats out there, as B. Rob like to explain them. Even though they want people to get paid, they still believe that the Republicans are wrong. And then lastly, I'll say this. If you look at the national polling that has been happening the last 40 days and even up until Monday morning, the American public are siding with the Democrats. They believe that healthcare, not affordability is there too, but healthcare, not tariffs, not the Epstein files, not all these other things, whether or not the president's spending too much time in foreign relations. But healthcare, Lisa, is the number one issue right now that they believe that the Democrats are leading on. And so I think that Warnock and Ossoff will be fine because they are where the people are right now.
But Tharon, you're at the airport giving away gas cards. Mm-hmm. Isn't that enough to say, hey, let's get the government open and let's do something, on the other side of this?
Yeah, Lisa,
it's
an and. Michael Thurman always tells me we focused on Mitch on the or. It's the and. There's money right now in the federal budget that is in reserves to make sure that SNAP people who apply for SNAP can actually get the money. The Trump administration appealed the federal judge ruling out of Rhode Island. All right, so that's how we fix SNAP. Just stop trying to fight it in courts and do that. TSA workers. There's money there to make sure that states can do much, right? If you take just 1% of the $17 billion that we have in reserve right now in the state, that could help with these TSA workers. But more importantly, the shutdown does need to end, but all the Republicans have to do, Lisa, is to say, hey, listen, Democrats, we're going to give you guys an up and down vote to make sure that these healthcare subsidies don't expire. You can do that. So notice what I said is met with mixed emotions, but this is not the first time that we've been shut down. The difference between this shutdown is it's lasted longer than all the others, and that the Republicans are just refusing to do nothing to help these folks. And so that's, to me, the situation that I'm in personally, Lisa. But I do believe that we should end the shutdown and get these people paid. But I also want to applaud these two U.S. senators, because once you hit that 40-day mark, you're in it now. And to just give up and say, hey, we're going to fold to Republicans, I think lets a lot of people down in this country.
Good analysis there from the Democrats. I think that's a good encapsulation of where the Democrats are on this issue. And, I think for Republicans, the message is very simple. Just vote yes, we'll get all these people paid. We'll move forward, and Congress can do its work. One thing that the New Hampshire Senator Maggie Hassan said on Sunday to explain her yes vote is, look, if we move forward here and get the government open, which we all want to do, and healthcare premiums go up, Republicans own that healthcare premium increase. And let them go and explain why these premiums are going up. It's not a Democrat problem. I mean, it's, in her view, a problem for the people whose prices are going up. But she's saying, I think we have leverage on this issue moving forward. I don't know if that's true or not, but I do think that's a good way of looking at this. John Fetterman is a yes vote out of Pennsylvania. I think he is probably wildly popular in Pennsylvania. Probably somebody who breaks through partisan lines when it comes to approval ratings of his constituency. I think that should be a very alluring model for Jon Ossoff as he's going into his election year. I think if you take fundraising out of it, and Ossoff obviously is going to raise tens of millions, and I think there will be, by the end of it, $250 million spent by Democrats trying to get Jon Ossoff reelected. But if you take the need that he has for a national fundraising base out of it, and a lot of that comes from people who are probably more ideologically motivated, more partisan than the average voter, if you take that out of it, the average Georgian would applaud him for having voted yes to get the government open. I think he would have gotten a lot of goodwill with the group that I call the deciders, those metro Atlanta, highly educated, more wealthy voters who are willing to choose between the parties in a general election. I think he would have gotten a lot of goodwill there if he had voted yes. So this is, once again, one of these areas, and I said the same thing about the girls' sports issue earlier this year, where he's having to choose between a loud and mobilized activist base and the middle in Georgia. And I think the middle in Georgia just wants to get the government back open. We can have a debate in the future about healthcare costs. And if Democrats are right, and that Americans are going to be hurt, and Americans are going to be on their side, and they're going to be angry because of their premium increases, well, then that's good politics for Democrats, right? Let it happen. Let the Republicans own that issue if they are right. I don't know the answer to that. I think about 7% of Americans are going to be impacted by this. But let's see how it plays out. And if they're right on the argument, they'll be right on the politics.
So real quick, Lisa, for our listeners, just let you know, this clean resolution that was led by the Republicans that 8 Democrats voted for, 3 of whom Brian just pointed out, does not have any mention of securing healthcare ACA subsidies outside of the promised vote. Okay, I want to repeat that. If Republicans were really serious about healthcare in this country, first of all, this bill only extends funding until the end of January. So we could be back on this show in January, Lisa and Brian, talking about a federal shutdown. I just want to I want to make sure our listeners understand this, right?
At this juncture,
right?
Yeah.
Before I go into my pushback and spin on what Brian said, so just to report the facts. This we could be back on this show in January or February talking about another shutdown. Number 2, the bill that the Republicans put forward and 8 Democrats voted for does not do anything about health care subsidies and ACA. So here's the thing you got to understand, right? And shout out to John Ossoff, who, by the way, was on a virtual call as we're taping. I cannot be on it. My colleagues are, but he kept his promise to the people of Georgia. He was supposed to have a meeting here in person. He could not make it, but he's explaining his vote now. So, Lisa, this is what I think went into the calculation with Warnock and Ossoff. Why would we fold when we have hung our shingle and our whole entire platform of why we are pushing back on this federal shutdown? Why would we fold on healthcare? I mean, that's why they voted no. And I respectfully disagree with B-Rob. I think once you explain it that way, if you've been in something for 40 days and the Republicans have been unwilling to do anything about healthcare, you can't just then say, you know what, okay, I'm gonna not do it. What Brian and other Republicans like to do is they complimented the guys 2 weeks ago. I mean, it was a Ossoff Warnock love affair. Oh my God, they voted to keep to make sure that the veterans and the workers got paid, right? I mean, love affair. Now, when it came to where the buck stops, and that is, hey, we want healthcare. Ossoff and Warnock have said now for months, we need to extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies in healthcare. If you force them to vote on a bill that doesn't include that, Lisa, they can't vote for it. So I think the people of Georgia are going to respect these 2 senators in the middle that B-Rob and I like to talk about. If you explain the way I just explained it, that they voted against this bill not because they don't want people to have money to get paid and go to work. They voted against it because Republicans refuse to do something that's needed, and other Republicans agree around healthcare. That's got to be the messaging for the rest of the week, is that had it included ACA subsidies, had it included a commitment to a vote, they would have voted for it.
I think the Republican message is the simpler message. And, one thing we saw in the PSC race was the Democrats had the simpler message, right? The Republicans had a good message. It was more complicated. It made sense if you heard it out. The Democrat message was, your power bill is too high. That fits on a bumper sticker. People get it, and it hit home. I think here, the Republican message is, Ossoff Warnock voted no. Ossoff Warnock voted to keep the government closed at the end of the day. And one thing I think that Republicans and Democrats need to fear at this juncture is our process is so broken. So little can get passed these days. That's why people like Brian Kemp don't want to run for U.S. Senate, because they do so very little. It's just a bunch of grandstanding for 40 days now on all sides. That's not a partisan jab at anybody. But they do so little that they are going to probably end the filibuster probably within the next year. There's just going to be too much pressure if this just keeps happening. It's going to have to be a majority vote. We've already seen it happen with judicial votes, and we've seen that have very big consequences. It was Harry Reid, the Democrat, who took away the filibuster on judicial nominees. Mitch McConnell said, you will regret this, and it may be sooner than you think. And that is how we got to this super majority on the Supreme Court for conservatives. It's because Harry Reid did that. So, both parties could pay a consequence, but I do think that's coming.
Tharon, you say Ossoff is on a call now explaining his vote. If this persists, let's say into the busy Thanksgiving holiday, how will this affect his run for his reelection?
Well, the meeting was not just about this vote. It's the unfortunate timing of the actual vote, which is why I'm complimenting him, Lisa, for being a man of his word and committing to have this meeting. But because this vote just happened last night and now we're Monday morning, he's keeping his commitment to meet the people. But I want to answer your question this way. If you look at 5 of the 8 Democrats who voted yes for this bill, and I'm gonna get into how this affects Ossoff. Hassan is in 2028. Fetterman is not back up until 2028. Tim Kaine is not back up until 2030. Roseanne is in the 2030, and Cortez Mastro is 2028. All right, so all these folks who voted, and it kind of goes into B. Rob's point about Warnock, right? Warnock is not back up on the U.S. Senate ballot in Georgia until 28. If you're John Ossoff, you literally, again, I go back to standing on business. You have literally found that at the end of the day, your conscience has got to be right. So for him to vote no, and he's up next year, Lisa, he's going to take all the bumps and the bruises that Brian has laid out. Yes, it'll help him with fundraising, but if you hear John Ossoff talk about this is not about a vote to help money. I mean, really, John is going to have plenty of money. He's not going to have a money problem. He believes that when he is put in a position to explain this to Georgians about it, I think that he feels that he would be good. You know, I got one of our colleagues, Brian knows this, when I said on a poll, and I had to send it to him, that in a recent AJC poll, and we're going to talk about this a little later in the week, but Ossoff is getting more than what people think. How about that? That's a better way of saying it on the Republican side. There are some Republicans who are like, you know what, I kind of like this guy's approach, his consistent with services. The majority of them are going to still vote for the Republican nominee. So I think John Ossoff was willing, Lisa, to maybe have to have a deeper conversation with some of those moderate Republicans that are liking him. But he knows that he's got to shore up his base. And the base of voters right now are with him on this vote. And so I think the fact that Warnock did it with him too, it eliminated, well, okay, Warnock voted for it, why didn't you? I mean, the two of these men standing together, I think really helped him as well. So I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be good to go with next November.
I just want to say there, I appreciate what Tharon is saying. I appreciate the acknowledgement of the reality of this, that what he is doing is shoring up his base. And that is important at this juncture going into an election year. I get it. And he's having to make that choice, right? I appreciate Tharon making the point that this is probably going to hurt him with that 1/5 of Republicans.
I didn't say it was going to hurt him. I said he's just going to have a conversation with them, right? I didn't say it was going to, I don't think it's going to hurt him as bad, because I think he's built up some goodwill with him. I don't think it's going to hurt him as bad as you think it's going to be. But he is going to have deeper conversations with him.
Because I think one thing he says, that moderate Republicans, even those who say nice things about him or say, I approve of his job, most of them are still going to vote for the Republican in the general election. That's what you said, and you're right. That is the truth.
Yeah, most of them, but some will not. Yeah.
He's got to carve into some of that, and that's going to depend on the political environment, and that's going to depend on who the Republicans nominate. All of those things matter. One thing I want to give y'all some insight here on the Republican side is that a Kemp-led outside group in favor of Derek Dooley, doing a lot of spending on behalf of Derek Dooley, released a very controversial video amongst Republicans last week, attacking Mike Collins and Buddy Carter for being part of the broken system that has left the government shut down for so long. And something really unusual happened. The NRSC, the political arm of U.S. Senate Republicans that engages in these races around the country, attacked Brian Kemp by name on social media for the ad. And I got a text on Saturday night as I was enjoying some football from a buddy in the White House who was a little perturbed by the messaging that was coming out of the Kemp organization. So the Kemp people are certainly wading in with a message. They are throwing up some elbows here. They are certainly showing they're willing to fight, and they're willing to take on very big interest in D.C. And the very big interest in D.C. are showing they're willing to throw up elbows against the chairman of the Republican Governors Association, Brian Kemp, the national figure at this juncture, chairman all year long. So that's a little insight into what's happening on the Republican side. And boy, is it juicy. I am so glad that I am not involved in that race, and I can watch it from the sidelines like the heavyweight boxing match that it is.
Well, of course, we're going to have more on all of that to come as Republicans and Democrats are still at a stalemate in Washington. We'll see what happens in the House. Of course, we're all hoping this shutdown will end soon. Next time, we're going to talk about the 2026 governor's race here in Georgia, a new poll that shows who is at a clear advantage on both sides today. And I stress today because you know that can change. I'm your host, Lisa Rayam, with Democratic strategist Tharon Johnson and Republican strategist Brian Robinson, hoping that you stay warm this week. Thanks for listening.